Emma had rehearsed her interview answers for days, pacing the small living room of her shared apartment while imagining confident smiles and firm handshakes. The job meant stability, a chance to finally stop juggling multiple shifts and worrying about overdue bills. She wore her only formal blouse, carefully pressed the night before, and tied her hair neatly, determined to look calm even though her stomach twisted with nerves. Snow fell lightly outside as she waited for the bus, clutching her resume like it was a lifeline. This interview felt like her last real shot before deadlines and debts began to swallow her whole. She whispered a small promise to herself that she would not mess this up. Today mattered more than most days she could remember. The bus arrived late, crawling through icy streets made even slower by holiday traffic. Emma kept checking her watch, her pulse climbing with every wasted minute. She reread her resume, mouthing silent reminders of achievements that often felt smaller than they looked on paper. When she finally stepped off near the downtown business district, she hurried along slick sidewalks, carefully avoiding puddles of half-melted snow. People rushed past her with umbrellas and briefcases, each absorbed in their own destination. The glass tower of the company rose ahead like a challenge she had to conquer. She drew a steadying breath and kept moving. Half a block from the building entrance, she heard a weak voice calling out from the curb. At first she ignored it, assuming someone else would respond, but the voice persisted. Turning, she saw an older woman slumped awkwardly in a wheelchair, one wheel stuck in a patch of uneven slush by the curb ramp. The woman struggled to push but barely budged the chair, her gloves slipping uselessly against the rims. Cars passed without slowing, horns blaring impatiently. Pedestrians glanced briefly then continued on, unwilling to break their routines. Emma hesitated, torn between urgency and instinct, eyes flicking again to the tall glass building just steps away. Her watch read 5 minutes to interview time. Logic screamed that stopping meant being late, maybe even missing her chance altogether. But the helplessness on the woman's face anchored Emma to the spot. Without further thought, she jogged back and crouched beside the wheelchair. "Let me help you," she said quickly, hands already gripping the back handles. The older woman looked up, surprise and gratitude mixing in her tired eyes. "Thank you, dear," she breathed, clearly shaken. Emma gently pulled the chair backward off the slush before pushing forward along the ramp. Once they were safely on the sidewalk, Emma adjusted the chair so it faced forward. She noticed the woman shivering, her thin blanket barely covering her knees. "Are you okay?" Emma asked. The woman nodded, though her lips trembled in the cold. "I'll be fine," she said. "I just misjudged the curb." Emma considered running on, but something urged her to do more. She wrapped her own scarf around the woman's shoulders, ignoring how exposed it left her to the cold. "Stay warm," she insisted. The woman gave her a searching look. "You were in a hurry," she noted, observing Emma's flushed cheeks and tense posture. Emma forced a small smile. "I had an interview," she admitted. "I might already be late." Guilt flickered across the woman's face. "Oh no, I didn't mean to delay you," she said, clearly upset. Emma shook her head. "It's all right. Someone needed help, that's all." Traffic finally paused at the crosswalk, and Emma pushed the wheelchair over to a safer spot near a cafe entrance where the pavement was dry. She asked the woman if anyone was coming for her. "My driver is running behind," the woman explained. "I'm meeting my son at that building," she added, gesturing vaguely toward the corporate tower Emma was heading to. Emma nodded, glancing anxiously at her watch again. The delay now stretched past what she could rationally excuse. After ensuring the woman was comfortable and out of immediate danger, Emma apologized softly. "I should go," she said. "I hope you're okay." The woman clasped Emma's hand with unexpected strength. "Thank you for stopping when others wouldn't," she said. "Not many would." The words warmed Emma even as dread tightened her chest. She offered one last reassuring smile and hurried off, scarf forgotten but heart strangely lighter. When Emma reached the building, breathless and flustered, security pointed to the reception desk. She rushed forward only to be met with a polite but firm expression. "I'm here for the 10 o'clock interview," she said, name tumbling out quickly. The receptionist checked the screen and frowned apologetically. I'm sorry, ma'am. Interviews for this role started precisely at 10. You were marked absent at 10:30, and the final candidate has already been selected. Emma stared, words failing her. I was only late because I was helping someone who was stuck outside, she blurted, realizing how weak the excuse sounded in this world of schedules and policies. The receptionist softened slightly. I understand, but unfortunately we can't reopen the process. She handed Emma a business card. You're welcome to apply again if another position opens. Emma nodded numbly, thanked her out of habit, and turned away. The weight of the missed opportunity crashed down all at once, pressing tears into her eyes. She stepped back outside into the cold, seeing the corporate tower now not as a promise but as a mirror of her own harsh reality. Helping someone had been the right choice, she told herself, but right choices rarely paid rent. She leaned against the glass, swallowing the sob rising in her throat. Across the street, she spotted the woman in the wheelchair again, now sheltered beside the cafe. A sharply dressed man stood next to her, talking urgently into a phone before hanging up. When he looked toward Emma, recognition flickered briefly across his face. He helped the woman adjust her blanket and leaned closer to speak. Emma turned away quickly, not wanting any further reminders of the costly kindness that had just derailed her future. She walked to the bus stop with slow, heavy steps, hands burning from the cold where her scarf had once shielded her neck. The bus shelter offered little comfort as wind sliced through her thin blouse. Emma wrapped her arms around herself, replaying the receptionist's words in her mind. Final candidate selected. The phrase echoed like a locked door slamming shut. She wondered if compassion would ever make sense in a world that demanded punctuality over humanity. By the time the bus arrived, Emma no longer felt the sting of tears, just a dull emptiness where hope had been moments earlier. She took a seat near the back and stared out the window as the city blurred past. She had done the right thing, even if the cost was high. Still, she had no idea how deeply her small choice was about to reshape not just her job prospects, but her entire life. The bus ride home felt longer than the journey downtown, every stop stretching Emma's thoughts back to the receptionist's polite rejection. She replayed the moment she chose to turn toward the stranded woman instead of the glass tower, wondering if 5 minutes had really been all that separated her from stability. The logical voice in her head said yes, it did, and that voice was hard to silence. She pressed her forehead gently against the cold window, watching snow smear into streaks of white as traffic crawled. Each street passed like a reminder of things she still lacked: security, certainty, peace. Yet beneath the disappointment, she felt no real regret for helping. That quiet conviction confused her, making the loss feel heavier but also strangely meaningful. When she reached her apartment, Emma kicked off her shoes and sank onto the couch without bothering to remove her coat. The place smelled faintly of instant noodles and cleaning products, the familiar scent of a life held together carefully but barely. Her roommate hadn't returned from work yet, leaving the space unusually silent. Emma stared at the resume folder resting on the coffee table, the papers inside now seeming useless. She picked it up, flipping through achievements that no longer felt impressive. "What's the point of being kind if it only sets you back?" she muttered aloud, though some part of her still resisted believing that entirely. Her phone buzzed with a notification reminding her of a utility bill coming due. She sighed heavily, sliding the phone face down. Today's rejection tallied up in her mind not just as disappointment, but as financial threat. Without the job, another month of double shifts waited, more exhaustion, more uncertainty. She brewed a cup of tea she barely drank, letting steam fog the air while she sat motionless at the small kitchen table. It felt unfair that a single spontaneous decision could derail so much effort, but life rarely respected fairness. Late in the afternoon, her roommate Chloe returned, cheeks pink from the cold and grocery bags dangling from her arms. She noticed Emma's slumped posture immediately. "Interview didn't go well?" Chloe asked gently while setting the bags down. Emma shook her head, eyes glossy. "I didn't even get to do it," she said flatly and explained what had happened outside the building. Chloe listened wide-eyed, then released a small sigh. "That's awful timing," she said, "but honestly, you did the right thing." Emma sniffed. Right doesn't pay rent, she replied quietly. Chloe squeezed her shoulder. No, but it keeps you human. That evening, Emma forced herself to scan job boards again, though every posting blurred together. Her motivation felt thin, yet she applied to a few positions anyway, clicking submit with the numb efficiency of routine. As night fell, she found herself scrolling social media absent-mindedly, trying to distract from the heaviness inside. Among holiday posts and ads for sales, nothing caught her interest until a news article popped up in her feed. The headline read, "Local philanthropist suffers minor incident downtown, praises bystander for quick help." Her heart skipped as she tapped the link. The article described an older woman in a wheelchair who had become stuck at a curb due to icy conditions and was assisted by a young job applicant on her way to an interview. No names were mentioned, but the scenario felt unmistakably familiar. The woman was identified as Margaret Westwood, a prominent business investor and widow of a former real estate magnate. The piece ended with Margaret's statement thanking an unknown young woman for reminding me that compassion still exists. Emma stared at the screen, pulse quickening. A knot formed in her chest as she wondered if this wealthy stranger was the very woman she had helped. Chloe leaned over her shoulder. "That looks like your story," she whispered. Emma nodded slowly. "It has to be," she said. She felt a strange combination of validation and anxiety. Being recognized didn't fix her job situation, yet knowing the woman's gratitude was genuine brought a small comfort. Still, she pushed the thought aside, assuming nothing more would come of it. People thanked helpers publicly all the time, the world rarely rewarded them personally. Days passed as Emma resumed her grueling routine. Early mornings, double shifts at the cafe where she worked, long walks home in the cold with aching feet. The missed interview became an ache duller with time, though it never fully faded. Occasionally she wondered about Margaret, picturing her safe with family or staff, likely far removed from the consequences Emma bore for stopping. The difference between their lives seemed almost absurdly large. Emma used the idea as quiet motivation not to become bitter. One afternoon during a slow cafe shift, Emma wiped down tables near the window when the bell over the door chimed. She looked up casually, then froze. The woman in the wheelchair was entering, pushed by a handsome, well-dressed man who clearly resembled her. Margaret's eyes scanned the room until they landed squarely on Emma, and her expression brightened with recognition. "That's her," she said aloud, raising a delicate hand to point. The man followed her gaze and studied Emma with sharp curiosity. Emma's stomach dropped as she realized she could not escape this encounter. She stepped forward awkwardly. "Hello," she said unsurely. Margaret smiled warmly. "My dear, I found you," she said, voice rich with sincerity. "I have been hoping I would." Emma blinked. "Found me?" she repeated. Margaret nodded. "I asked my assistant to search nearby cafes until we located you. I couldn't let what happened go without speaking to you properly." The man extended a hand. "I'm Daniel Westwood," he said. "Margaret's son." Emma shook his hand politely, noticing how his gaze remained attentive without being cold. "You helped my mother when she needed it most," he added. "Thank you." Emma felt a bit embarrassed. "It was nothing," she insisted. "Anyone would have done the same." Margaret scoffed softly. "No, dear. You're proof that not everyone would." Margaret asked to sit at a small table while Emma fetched tea for her. Though she was technically on shift, her manager noticed the interaction and allowed the short break. Emma returned with a tray, heart pounding as she sat across from the woman she never expected to see again. "I heard you missed your interview because of me," Margaret said gently. Emma stiffened. "It's all right," she replied quickly. "I don't blame you." Margaret's eyes softened but sharpened with resolve. "I do," she said quietly. "Not personally, but at a world that punishes people for doing the right thing." Daniel watched the exchange silently, arms folded loosely as he listened. Margaret clasped her hands. "Tell me about yourself, Emma," she said. "I want to know the young woman who chose kindness over convenience." Emma spoke hesitantly at first, then more openly, describing her studies she'd paused due to finances, her cafe job, the interview she had pinned hopes on. Margaret absorbed every detail with focused intensity. Daniel's expression shifted from polite interest to genuine admiration as Emma talked about juggling responsibilities without complaint. When she finished, Margaret leaned back slightly. "Emma," she said, "I'd like to help you." Emma instantly shook her head. "You don't have to," she said, uncomfortable. "I helped because it was right, not for anything in return." Margaret smiled approvingly. "Which is precisely why I want to," she replied. "Compassion should not leave a person poorer." Daniel nodded in agreement. Margaret then added something that made Emma's breath catch. "Beyond that," she said slowly, eyes flicking briefly toward her son, "I believe good character is the most valuable quality someone can bring into a family." Emma narrowed her eyes slightly, unsure of the meaning behind the comment. Daniel looked equally surprised for a moment. Margaret's smile turned playful. "I was only half joking, dear," she said softly. But a sudden lightness gleamed in her gaze that hinted at intentions far deeper than Emma yet imagined. Emma walked back behind the cafe counter after the unexpected meeting, feeling like the ground beneath her had shifted. Margaret's words echoed in her ears, especially the teasing but strangely loaded remark about family and character. She tried to focus on taking orders and refilling cups, but her mind kept drifting back to the calm intensity in Daniel's eyes and the warmth in Margaret's voice. It all felt surreal, like a scene from someone else's life, not her own. She told herself to stay grounded. Wealthy strangers making kind offers didn't suddenly rewrite reality. Still, when her shift ended that evening, the uncertainty followed her home. At the apartment, Chloe listened wide-eyed as Emma recounted every detail. "She found you," Chloe repeated, nearly squealing. "That's insane." Emma laughed nervously. "More like improbable," she replied. "Nothing's come of it yet." Chloe crossed her arms thoughtfully. "Maybe it will," she said. "People with that kind of power don't usually stop at thank you tea." Emma shrugged, unwilling to let herself hope too much. Disappointment had taught her to tread carefully with optimism. The following morning, an unfamiliar number lit up Emma's phone. Her pulse jumped as she answered. "Hello, Emma?" Margaret's voice came through warmly. "I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time." Emma quickly assured her she wasn't busy. Margaret explained that she and Daniel would like to invite her to lunch at a small restaurant near the lake. "Just to talk more," Margaret added. "No obligations attached." Emma hesitated but ultimately agreed, unsure what to expect yet sensing that declining would feel wrong. The restaurant Margaret chose was nothing extravagant, a cozy place with wide windows overlooking half-frozen water. When Emma arrived, Margaret waved eagerly while Daniel stood to greet her politely. He wore casual clothes this time, a wool sweater instead of a suit, which softened his appearance. Lunch unfolded easily, conversation slipping from casual topics to deeper ones without strain. Daniel asked about Emma's dreams, her interests outside work, what she loved most about helping people. She answered honestly, surprised by how comfortable she felt opening up. Daniel shared pieces of his own life, describing the pressure of growing up in immense privilege while longing for a sense of purpose beyond wealth. "My mum has always tried to keep me grounded," he confessed lightly. "Volunteering, meeting real people, not just attending gala dinners." Margaret nodded proudly. "Character before comfort," she said firmly, her life mantra clearly influencing her son. Emma realized how intentionally Margaret had been watching her in the cafe, not merely with curiosity but quiet assessment. Over dessert, Margaret became more direct. "Emma," she began gently, "I helped Daniel start a hiring program for young professionals interested in community outreach and social venture projects. We often struggle to find people with genuine compassion rather than polished resumes." She looked Emma squarely in the eyes. "I believe you're exactly the kind of person we're searching for." Emma blinked, stunned. "Me?" she whispered. "I don't even have a formal business background." Margaret smiled. "Skills can be taught." Character cannot. Daniel added quickly, you wouldn't be handed anything. You'd train alongside others and work directly with our foundation partners. The sincerity in his voice reassured her that this wasn't charity disguised as opportunity. Emma felt a pulse of cautious excitement. I'd love that, she said softly, emotion threatening to crack her voice. Margaret beamed. Wonderful. Then consider this your second chance, born out of your first imperfect but beautiful choice. As the conversation shifted again, the atmosphere lightened. Daniel suggested they walk along the lake afterward. The three strolled slowly over the wooden boardwalk, seabirds gliding low over the icy water. Margaret hung back slightly, letting Emma and Daniel walk ahead. At first conversation remained polite, but gradually it softened into something gentler. They found shared humor in minor things, Emma's disastrous attempts at cooking and Daniel's overly dramatic childhood piano lessons. Emma noticed how attentive Daniel was, never talking over her or glancing at his phone. He truly listened. You know, he said quietly, most people my age are fascinated by money they think will fix everything. You're the first person I've met who never even asked about it. Emma smiled faintly. Because I already know it doesn't solve the important problems, she replied. Daniel regarded her thoughtfully. That's exactly why my mum already adores you, he said. When Margaret caught up to them near the car, she studied their comfortable conversation with unmistakable satisfaction. I see you two get along, she said teasingly. Emma flushed slightly, laughing nervously. Daniel rubbed the back of his neck with an awkward grin. Margaret winked at Emma. My instincts are rarely wrong, she said. Kind hearts attract each other naturally. Over the next weeks, Emma began training under the Westwood Foundation's outreach branch. Her role involved coordinating volunteers for housing projects and community food programs. She learned rapidly, absorbing job responsibilities with the determination of someone who had been waiting for a chance to prove herself. Daniel often worked nearby, overseeing impact assessments and strategy. Their professional collaboration soon blended into casual coffee breaks, after-work walks, and long conversations about ideals, frustrations, and dreams. Neither rushed the blossoming connection into romance. Mutual respect built slowly, deepening trust before anything else. Margaret observed the progression fondly from a distance, offering only subtle encouragement. One evening after a productive day organizing a neighborhood shelter event, Daniel offered to walk Emma home. Snowflakes drifted around them much like on the day they first intersected through Margaret. The symbolism wasn't lost on either of them. I've been wanting to tell you something, Daniel said as they neared her apartment building. His voice carried gentle nerves. Emma stopped, facing him. You can tell me, she said softly. Daniel exhaled. I like you, he admitted simply. Not in a superficial way. I admire who you are. Emma's heart fluttered unpredictably. I like you too, she replied honestly. But I wanted to be sure this was real, not something created by circumstance. Daniel nodded in relief. I want it to be real, too. They didn't kiss that night. Instead, they stood for a moment holding hands, letting the quiet affirmation settle between them like fresh snow. For Emma, it was the first time affection came without desperation or fear of losing everything. It felt earned, not accidental. As she climbed the stairs to her apartment, her thoughts glowed with cautious hope. Back inside, Chloe noticed her expression immediately. You're glowing, she said with a grin. Emma covered her face in embarrassment. I think my life might actually be changing, she said quietly. Chloe hugged her tightly. About time, she whispered. Emma stood there embracing her friend, realizing how quickly kindness had grown from a spontaneous act into the roots of a future she never expected. Margaret, alone later that evening in her elegant living room, sipped tea while reflecting on the day. Watching Emma and Daniel together had confirmed what she felt since the curbside rescue. Kindness bound souls more powerfully than wealth ever could. Sometimes, she murmured to herself with satisfaction, you don't find a daughter-in-law through pedigree or connections. She smiled knowingly. You find her through character. Emma's first official promotion at the foundation came sooner than she ever expected. Her supervisors praised her organization skills and natural empathy when coordinating volunteer teams across the city. What she lacked in corporate training she more than made up for through determination and intuition. Daniel often observed her during field visits, quietly admiring how easily she connected with everyone from students to senior community leaders. It was during one of these long days, while packing donated supplies into a van, that he first realized how deeply his feelings for her had grown. Though their closeness gradually eased into romance, they remained mindful not to rush. At first their dates were simple: outdoor cafes, evening bookshop visits, window shopping walks through quiet neighborhood streets. Daniel enjoyed how grounded Emma remained despite the dramatic turns her life had taken. She never acted impressed by luxury or status. Instead, she focused on people and stories. He found himself opening up about insecurities he'd never voiced, including fears of being valued only for his inheritance. Emma listened gently without judgment. "You're more than what you were born into," she would remind him. Margaret noticed the depth between them during family dinners she invited Emma to attend. Her home was elegant but welcoming, far from the intimidating atmosphere one might expect. Despite the luxury surrounding them, Margaret insisted on personally serving meals whenever Emma visited. She asked countless questions about Emma's life, favorite books, childhood memories, and career aspirations. Each answer only strengthened her approval. "You carry heart and grit together," Margaret once said proudly. "That blend is rare." Emma always felt both humbled and comforted by the older woman's affection. Over time, rumors circulated quietly in social circles about Daniel seeing someone. Emma worried at first about becoming the subject of gossip, but Daniel reassured her. "Anyone who cares about gossip doesn't get a vote in my happiness." His unwavering support gave Emma courage. She realized for the first time she was loved for simply being herself, not as a symbol or social accessory. One spring evening, Daniel surprised Emma by inviting her to dinner at the same downtown restaurant near where she had lost the interview months earlier. Sitting at the familiar window table now felt surreal compared to that painful memory. Emma touched the glass softly, smiling. "This place used to represent everything I lost," she said. "Now it feels like where everything quietly began." Daniel reached for her hand. "And where you proved the kind of person you are," he replied sincerely. During dessert, Daniel appeared especially nervous. He shifted in his seat and cleared his throat several times. "There's something important I want to ask you," he began. Emma met his eyes, her heart quickening with intuition. "Whatever it is," she smiled, "you can say it." Daniel inhaled slowly. "Would you consider moving in with me?" he asked. "Not into some massive house filled with reminders of status, but somewhere we choose together. A place that lets us build something real." Emotion swelled in Emma's chest as she nodded. "I'd love that," she said softly. They spent weeks searching neighborhoods until they found a modest townhouse near a riverside trail, warm and cozy rather than grand. Decorating it became one of their favorite shared projects. Thrift store paintings on the walls, second-hand furniture refinished together, books lining uneven shelves. For the first time, Emma experienced a home built not from necessity but shared intention. Living together deepened their bond further. They navigated everyday challenges, disagreements about chores, busy schedules, exhaustion, but handled them with respect and humor. They learned how to apologize quickly and listen sincerely. Daniel admired Emma's emotional intelligence, while she appreciated his gentle patience and quiet generosity. Neither tried to dominate the relationship. They moved as partners, supporting each other's goals without sacrificing identity. Margaret visited often, delighting in the warmth of their new home. One evening after dinner, while Emma was washing dishes, Margaret watched the young couple laugh together over an inside joke. She turned to her son quietly. "You understand how rare this is, don't you?" Daniel nodded. "I do." Margaret smiled tenderly. "Then don't ever take it for granted." He hugged her tightly, grateful for her guidance. Months passed, and summer arrived. At a Lakeside Foundation fundraiser, Emma delivered a short speech highlighting the organization's community success stories. Her words were heartfelt and powerful, drawing sincere applause. Daniel watched from the crowd, pride glowing unmistakably in his expression. Margaret dabbed her eyes discreetly beside him. "She's extraordinary," she whispered. Daniel smiled, filled with certainty. "She really is." Later that evening, as the sunset painted gold across the water, Daniel led Emma down a quiet dock away from the chatter of the event. "There's one more moment I need to make tonight about you," he said softly. He paused near the water's edge where lantern lights shimmered against gentle waves. Emma felt her breath catch. Daniel took her hands. "The day you helped my mum, you unknowingly changed 3 lives," he said. "Hers, mine, and yours. You showed me what courage really looks like, choosing people over convenience." His voice trembled slightly. "I can't imagine my future without you in it." He lowered to one knee, pulling out a delicate ring that gleamed in the lantern light. "Emma, will you marry me?" Emma gasped, tears spilling freely as she nodded repeatedly. "Yes," she whispered, voice breaking. Daniel slipped the ring onto her finger as cheers erupted behind them from a few unaware guests who had noticed the moment unfold. Margaret hurried forward, embracing them both with joyful laughter. "I knew it," she beamed. "From the curb that morning, I knew." Planning the wedding became a joyful blend of both worlds. Despite the Westwood wealth, Emma insisted on simplicity, a lakeside ceremony, a small guest list, heartfelt vows rather than spectacle. Margaret supported her every decision. "True luxury," she said firmly, "is love without excess." The wedding day glowed with warmth. Emma walked down the aisle in a simple ivory dress, sunlight dancing over the water behind her. Daniel watched through misty eyes, overwhelmed. Their vows spoke of kindness, partnership, and choosing one another daily regardless of circumstance. When they kissed as husband and wife, applause rippled from the small gathering like a wave of sincere joy. As they stood hand in hand at the celebration, Margaret raised her glass in a short toast. "To the courage of a young woman who helped a stranger without hesitation," she said. "And to the beautiful family that kindness created." Emma's eyes shone as she hugged her new mother-in-law, emotion overwhelming gratitude. That evening, walking together beneath summer stars, Emma reflected quietly on how helping a woman in a wheelchair had cost her a job but led her to a family, a purpose, and a love she never anticipated. What once felt like punishment had become redirection toward something infinitely better. And Margaret, smiling from afar, felt her heart full knowing she hadn't merely gained a daughter-in-law, she had gained the daughter of character she had always hoped her son would one day find. Married life settled into Emma and Daniel's days with gentle ease rather than dramatic change. They returned to work swiftly, choosing stability and purpose over indulgence. Emma continued leading community projects, now mentoring newly hired volunteers who reminded her of herself months earlier, nervous, hopeful, uncertain. Daniel balanced his responsibilities at the foundation with greater passion, focusing investments toward long-term housing, job training programs, and education grants. Their goals aligned naturally, and the teamwork strengthened both their marriage and their careers. Their townhouse filled with lived-in warmth, notes on the fridge reminding each other of errands, small potted plants lining the windowsills, framed photos from outreach projects hanging beside their wedding portrait. Evenings often ended with quiet dinners cooked side by side, laughing about the day's mishaps or planning weekend visits to nearby towns. Emma cherished the simplicity, a contrast to the uncertain life she once led and the wealthy world she'd briefly feared entering. Margaret remained a constant presence, visiting often yet never intruding. She delighted in watching the couple build their life without relying on privilege. One afternoon, while sitting with Emma over tea, she said thoughtfully, "Love grows best when it isn't smothered by power or expectation." Emma smiled sincerely. "You gave Daniel the freedom to choose from the heart," she said. Margaret nodded warmly. "And you gave him something worth choosing." Public attention occasionally brushed against their story. A lifestyle magazine requested to profile their unlikely meeting, painting it as a feel-good tale of fate. Emma agreed only if the focus remained on kindness rather than wealth. The resulting article highlighted community projects and the importance of everyday compassion. It inspired donations to several outreach programs, and Emma was invited to speak at events about how small choices could ripple into meaningful change. Not all days were easy. Emma sometimes struggled with moments of imposter syndrome, worried about whether she truly belonged in leadership roles once far beyond her reach. Daniel supported her unwaveringly, reminding her she hadn't been given anything she hadn't earned. On difficult nights, he would sit beside her on the couch, hands intertwined, repeating, "Your heart built your place here." Slowly, her confidence grew, grounded not in status but in experience. Together they cultivated an annual volunteer day every winter, honoring the moment that had changed their lives. Hundreds gathered downtown to help the elderly, provide warm meals, and assist people with mobility challenges crossing frozen sidewalks safely. Emma always stood among the volunteers rather than on a stage, guiding newcomers and sharing her story quietly when asked. Seeing the compassion ripple outward moved her every time. Daniel, watching her blend into the crowd with effortless humility, felt deep pride. He knew he lived beside someone extraordinary, not because of publicity or title, but because Emma remained the same woman who acted instinctively to help a stranger without pausing to calculate the cost. That core part of her had never changed. On the anniversary of the curbside rescue, Daniel and Emma visited the exact intersection where they had unknowingly become connected. Margaret joined them, sitting in her wheelchair wrapped warmly in a wool coat. Snow drifted again that evening, echoing the past. Emma crouched beside her, sharing a soft smile. "If I could relive that day," she said gently, "I'd do everything exactly the same." Margaret nodded. "So would I," she replied. "My struggle led me to a daughter I always hoped the world would send." They stood together quietly as cars passed and city lights glowed, 3 lives knit together by a single unplanned moment of kindness. Emma realized that the job she lost had been temporary, but what she gained had become permanent: love, belonging, and purpose. Later that night, at home, Emma rested her head on Daniel's shoulder as they watched snow fall through their living room window. "Funny how being punished for doing the right thing led me to the best life I never imagined," she murmured. Daniel kissed her forehead. "Sometimes destiny comes disguised as loss," he replied quietly. Emma closed her eyes, content. She no longer measured success by titles or salaries. For her, wealth meant shared laughter, service to others, and waking every morning beside the person who loved her for who she truly was. And far from the towering offices where her interview had once been lost, Emma understood the truth she now carried into each new day: doing good is never a failure, even when the world initially treats it like one.